I'm always amazed at how much money you can make being a racial grifter in the United States of America. This is why I've done a lot of stories recently of historic cases of racial grifting, like the Duke of Lacrosse case and the Tawana Brawley case, linked in the description if you want to check out those videos. Because in reality, if you've been to other countries in the world, you will recognize that the United States of America is one of, if not the least racist nation in the world. Period, point blank. If you don't believe me, again, please get off the internet, go outside, book a plane ticket when the virus is over, and visit any other country in the world and see how they handle minorities. Or crack a history book and realize that equal opportunity or equal rights for minorities is not the norm, it is unusual, and the United States even having something like the 14th Amendment makes it unique among nations in the history of the world. But that's not really the point. What we're going to talk about today is the relative gold mine that it is to be a racial grifter, and we're going to highlight this segment from Vice about a racist camp in Arizona that Republicans can't ban because parents are paying $500 to send their kids there. But you guys know how this works. I said gold mine. We have a sponsor. It's Noble Gold. Let's run into the ad and get back to the video. What if I told you you could get your hands on some gold from one of the most iconic shipwrecks in United States history? These pieces would serve as your piece of one of the most iconic periods in United States history. And of course, I'm talking about the California Gold Rush. And in fact, this shipwreck itself was a major contributor to the Panic of 1857. Now, obviously, I'm not talking about the Titanic. If you thought that, then you need to look up when the Titanic actually sank. I'm talking about the USS Central America. Now you can own these coins. Each one of them comes with their own certificate of authenticity along with a box so that you can keep these treasures long into the future. Visit my affiliate linked in the top of the description box of this video and in the pinned comment to get a hold of your piece of history today.
If you primarily studied the culture of your ancestors in elementary school, take a step forward.
So we start off with one of the left's favorite pointless, meaningless, worthless exercises, which is the privilege walk. And the first question is, if you study the culture primarily of your ancestors in elementary school, take a step forward. And all the white people take a step forward, which leads me to about half a dozen questions for these idiotic white people. Number one, are we just saying white people is who you're studying in history, therefore white people need to step forward? Because I sincerely doubt that these people are the same culturally or ethnically as the founding fathers. So the idea that they would correlate to them just because they have white faces is absolutely absurd. Also, all the black kids should have stepped forward, at least all the American-born black kids, because we learn a lot about them in elementary school. We have a whole month dedicated to them. We don't do history primarily of other cultures throughout our schooling education, but we do zero in on black people. Number two, the reason why we study American history in the United States of America should be unbelievably obvious. It should go without saying. But we don't study overall white culture in the United States of America in our public education system. We don't learn as detailed a history as they would in the UK with all the kings and all the wars and all the crazy stuff that went on there. But even learning that in the UK would make sense because those students are in the UK. So on its face, the premise that these kids are stepping forward to is unbelievably wrong. But more fundamentally, the reason why we study European history as compared to like African history or other nations around the world or continents around the world and their history is due to the fact that Europeans had written language before many of these other cultures, a written language that people can read. The way that Western Europe got written language was because they were invaded and slaughtered and subjugated by the Roman Empire. Now, through that brutal oppression and slaughter, the Western European nations received written language, which gave them advantages that led to them coming to the Americas and colonizing the Americas, thus leading to the setup for the United States of America, the first original anti-colonial nation, becoming a power. Now, the reason I bring this up is because somehow being conquered by the Roman Empire due to the fact that your geography made it easier for you to be invaded, like Western Europe was, is considered privilege today. So your ancestors being slaughtered in the past because they were left with written language after that is the essence of white Western European privilege, according to these idiots.
If you primarily studied the culture of your ancestors in elementary school, take a step forward.
Now, by the way, I actually went to Rome, and even though I have no plans to go back because Rome was unbelievably hot and never go there in the summer, if I do go back, I will ask the tour guides and all the people that are around the touristy areas of Rome why they keep teaching about the history of ancient Rome, and that's just Roman privilege. Why don't they teach about my history? And then I'll take steps back because I feel unprivileged by it. Ridiculous, absurd, insane, and this is just the first 15 seconds of the video.
So this is what they call a privilege line, and they ask a series of questions about how you may be privileged in life. And if you can see towards the front, it's mostly white male. In the back, it's mostly black women.
So the Vice guy explains the premise. The point of the questions is not to determine anything objective. It's not actually to determine privilege. It's an exercise in ignorance, but the whole goal is to get white males to the front and black women to the back, which, by the way, you could skip all these stupid steps and say white males go to the front, black women go to the back. Look at all this oppression that we've created artificially with our stupid ass questions.
If you do not have to think about race and racism every day, take a step forward.
Again, there's nothing mandating that anybody focus or think about race or racism every day. In fact, our cultural shift puts an emphasis on anti-white propaganda, so I would expect more and more white people, as these trends go on, to be the ones who are like, yeah, I have to think about it every single day because white privilege, white fragility, white supremacy, all this stuff is prolific in our media and in our pop culture, despite the fact that most of these people don't consider like a shared white identity a thing that they think about.
This is Anytown Leadership Camp. Atop a mountain in Arizona, detached from the distractions of the world, there's no horseback riding, creek swimming, or lake fishing. These young folks are here to lean into conversations most people try to stay away from. Conversations around race, diversity, and privilege.
So of course I have to laugh at this because this is a camp, but it's in no way a camp. There's no creek swimming. There's no activities associated with a camp. These people are leaning into those dreaded conversations that nobody wants to talk about. They're having a conversation, and we've talked about this before, about having a conversation, about sometimes having a conversation, about thinking about how to have a conversation about race and racism, which nobody wants to talk about, but these kids are leaning into it because their parents have $500 and a bucket full of white guilt, so they sent their kids over here.
Heard of prejudice or has an idea of what prejudice is?
So I just want to zero in on this little frame right here because they're talking about this pyramid of prejudice where it all starts at the top, even though, by the way, it's actually reversed. The smaller portion at the top is supposed to be genocide. I've actually seen this stupid ass pyramid before, but it's like avoidance and all these different things. But I want to talk about the left side of this because on the TV, they talk about prejudice and then they highlight hundreds attending a peaceful Black Lives Matter protest. Again, these protests were largely not peaceful. Remember the study that says 97% of them over this 90-day period were peaceful actually reflected over 550 riots if you do the math on what was actually peaceful versus non-peaceful. So I guess they're saying that the lies in favor of them lead to prejudice because those were the lies, what they're putting up there, that this was a peaceful movement. Also, they counted events where like 15 people showed up at noon as peaceful protests in order to bolster their numbers and lower the percentage of violent riots that happen, as if we all didn't see the videos, as if we all didn't see the terror, as if we all didn't see every window in Fifth Avenue of Manhattan being smashed out by these rioters. Sure.
What exactly is this thing?
So sometimes described as like a human relations camp, a leadership camp. We're talking about kind of all the isms. So we'll focus on racism, sexism, ableism, but then we're also focusing on like, how do you have a productive conversation?
So this is the grifter extraordinaire, the guy behind the camp. Obviously, if you guys haven't noticed it, let me notice it for you. This guy looks like an evil SJW version of Count Dankula. Those are the facts. That's how he looks. I don't know how they're related, but we will be investigating this. Maybe he was offended so hard by Count Dankula's pug incident that he decided to set up this racist camp.
Like, how do you have a productive conversation?
Again, this mythical productive productive conversation. They're all about having a conversation. They're talking about having a conversation. They have a whole camp set up so that you guys can have a conversation about having a conversation about learning to have a conversation. You're paying him $500. The least he could do is give your kids this stupid ass productive conversation, but he never seems to be able to. But he's going to teach the kids how to talk about maybe sometime in the future, but not right now. Definitely not right now. Definitely not for the first $500. Having a conversation about having a conversation about maybe in the future, at some point in the future, far off in the distance, having a conversation about talking about a conversation related to race.
Now, there are dozens of any towns across America, but they all operate independently.
So the fact that there's dozens of these camps across America and they operate independently means the onus is on you to figure out where these camps are so that you can know to definitely not send your kids there. Because I know parents, I know how you guys think. You want to get rid of your kid for the summer, you think you're sending them to a fancy camp, but in reality, they're just going to be sent to a camp where they have to have a conversation about having a conversation about maybe talking about having a conversation, maybe sometime in the future about racism.
Here in Arizona, campers pay up to $500 to spend the week talking about these controversial issues.
How many of you have ever been in a situation where you were with someone saying something like racist, homophobic, just something hateful, and you were like frozen in that moment and had no idea what to do?
Seriously, $500 for this. This camp sucks. Don't make this guy rich. You see how many kids are there? And they're paying $500 for this guy to talk nonsense to them for a month, a week. I don't know how long this camp is, but it's too long.
Matt Case is an Arizona public school teacher and one of the camp's 3 directors.
So as if this wasn't horrible enough, this guy is a public school teacher. Enough has been said on this channel about the education system in the United States of America. Public school teacher running this camp.
But he first came to Anytown as a camper at 17.
When I first started, like in the 90s, I think we had a very, like almost a little bit of a colorblind approach. And so what's changed there is like, we're gonna take a look at white privilege. We're gonna take a look at like how that plays out through different identities, right?
So I like how this has morphed, like many institutions over time, into a more racist institution. So before, they had a colorblind approach, meaning that they were actually trying to teach kids to not be racist. But now they focus on white privilege and anti-white dogma because they've been influenced by critical race theory. Remember, Derek Bell, as well as many other critical race theory scholars, reject the notions of colorblindness. They reject the notions of meritocracy. They reject the notions that we can form a cohesive society, that this is a melting pot. They want people segregated. They want people to emphasize race, and they consider integrations into a greater overall culture, cultural genocide or black genocide if black people are doing the integrating. Absolutely shameful. He admits it right there, but it's just glossed over. Let's play some upbeat music in the background from Vice.
That phrase, tip of the iceberg, there's identity that people see, but then there's identity that's deeper.
So one of the things that I absolutely hate about the left and these race grifters is that they never say anything. And I mock it by saying they're starting a conversation about having a conversation sometimes in the future about having a conversation. But in reality, it's analogies like this. He's like, this is the tip of the iceberg. When I say that, what you need to understand is there's what you see at the top, and then there's what you don't see at the bottom of the iceberg. Yeah, we understand, or at least, please God, these kids are old enough, hopefully. I know you're a public school teacher, so maybe they actually don't understand it from the public schools, to understand what a tip of the iceberg analogy is, that there is stuff beneath the surface. In fact, it's usually 90% beneath the surface. Jesus Christ, I can't believe this was highlighted from the Vice highlight reel to show us what the classes are like. Imagine how dog, you know what, or terrible the classes actually are based on the footage that Vice didn't go with. This was considered a highlight. This guy saying, there's an iceberg part at the top, the way we say tip of the iceberg, and then there's the bottom that you could see. Jesus Christ, I can't even imagine how horrible this class is.
Why are you here at Anytown Camp?
I think at first I just signed up because I thought it was going to be like leadership, and with that, like I want to go into business, so I thought that'd be good for me.
Yeah, Eva, the girl who wants to start her own business, this is the last place you want to be in order to learn any skills about starting your own business. In fact, based on the patterns across the country of Asian people being attacked, your parents would be better off putting that $500 in some kind of an account so it can get some interest rate, so you can get some metal shutters for your business at some point in the future.
Actually, my Spanish teacher told me it was like this leadership camp and I could come here to get 50 service hours, which was like my main reason to
Oh,
come.
so you came here for the service hour.
Yeah.
So this part really bothered me because this girl learned from her Spanish teacher that this is a leadership seminar. No, it isn't. It's a victimization seminar. It's a white guilt seminar. But more crucially, she can get her 50 service hours from attending this, meaning that the school is granting you points or privileges or whatever for attending this propaganda camp run by a propagandist masquerading as a teacher.
Well, I'm here mostly because of my mother, who had signed me up for this camp, and I accepted that decision, and now I'm here.
So low-key, this guy's my favorite guy out of all the people there, because when you go through the camp, it doesn't look like he's into it. It looks like he kind of understands what's going on, and that in fact, he's in a propaganda camp that's completely stupid. So keep an eye on him going forward in the future.
My mom, and she told me, but like a couple of nights before, and I didn't want to come, but she packed my bag for me. So,
and of course, this guy was sent by his mom. Mom packed the bags, made him go because you need to learn about your oppression or whatever.
Like most camps, you got workshops, games, and activities, but these activities are designed to have campers engage some of America's most sensitive topics. There's dialogue instead of debate.
Again, dialogue instead of debates, conversations about conversations. What these kids need is debates. They need somebody in here to challenge and disassemble all the stupid points of this. Because the whole idea of privilege is an idea that you don't believe in merit. It's an idea that you don't believe in cause and effect. Because people work for and achieve what they do in their lives, and they set up their kids for success, and that is labeled as privilege, even though that's achievement. This castigation as achievement, as some kind of unearned privilege or unfair advantage, is absolutely absurd. And this is what we need to teach kids to stop obsessing over. Stop looking at your neighbor. Let's go biblical. Stop coveting your neighbor's ox and actually do the work yourselves to set your kids up to achieve.
There's some role play.
I mean, it's just a compliment. Like, I want your skin color. Like, it's beautiful.
So they're doing role play, and are we surprised at all that this is what they come up with? That a white person is like, I want your skin? That's really creepy. It's really absurd. But of course, you have to castigate the white people as the bad people because stupid, ignorant, dumb white girl, you're so dumb and stupid and ignorant because you're white, can't understand that saying I want your skin is bad. And she's like, it's a compliment because she can't listen to the strong black female who's offended by this. Oh my God, wow. Wow, they learned so much. Wow.
And there's a lot of listening.
A large part of this Anytown camp is making space for individuals and groups to be heard. And right now they're getting prepared for what they call a fishbowl, where groups will sit here in the middle, have a conversation, while people on the outside just shut up and listen.
So we talk often about how race grifters in our society just want to be centered. They want to be the focus of attention. They want people to be forced to listen to them complain about themselves, because in reality, a lot of this is self-absorbed stuff. A lot of it's denial of circumstances, denial of problems within one's own group that are preventing them from achieving. A lot of it is not addressing those problems. We talked about crime, we talked about single-parent households, etc. But we mostly, or at least a lot of the times, discuss people just wanting attention. This is literally them being centered. They have developed an exercise where they are centered and everybody else is forced to listen to them ramble on about racial issues, none of which are actually problems within the black community. They're just feelings, and it's like, oh my God, I've never been a fly on the wall in this conversation. I'm so privileged or whatever. Total nonsense. But again, a perfect distillation, a visual representation of what we've been seeing in our society over the past God knows how many years.
What does it mean to be black?
It's a part of us, but it's not all we are.
We're expected to be strong and able to handle everything.
You're expected to be strong and to handle everything? No. Nobody has these unwieldy expectations for you. Literally, the expectations for black people are the same expectations for everybody. Don't commit crimes, take care of your own children, go to school, get educated, and you'll be successful. Get a job. Like that's really what we expect from everyone in our society. Nobody wants you to be super strong or anything like that. Maybe that's within the black community. Maybe that's within black communities, whatever. But externally, no.
But being a black person, I don't necessarily feel like I always have the right to be more sensitive.
Look, I wasn't going to say anything, but this guy says that he feels like he can't be sensitive because people will be upset that he's sensitive. I don't want to say anything. I'm not saying anything, but I look at you and you come off as pretty sensitive in your voice, your tone, the way that you're dressed, your orientation reads very sensitive to me. Not saying anything, just saying.
The fishbowl is like being under the real-time anthropological gaze of other folks. They're a fly on the wall in the living room, barbershop, and beauty salon.
I'm amused that they developed some phony anthropological reason for this, that it's just like the real phenomenon of everybody watching black people. Again, this is America, and I'm not making this unique or special to black people. Nobody cares about anybody enough to hold them down. Nobody cares about anybody enough to watch them. It's absolutely absurd. And his analogies about how this is the barbershop or the beauty salon. Way to play into stereotypes, you jerk. Horrible, horrible stereotypes from Vice. I'm disgusted. I'm going to write them an angry letter about this.
Midweek, campers break into small groups based on shared experiences like race or sexual orientation.
Another word for that is segregation. At this point in the camp, the campers segregate themselves. Great job, again. Amazing.
And they talk about what ties them together. Later in the evening, there's culture night. It's like identity show and tell, where you present your culture to the camp through skits, discussion, and audience interaction.
So we all know already identity show and tell, where you talk about your culture, where you present it to the group. We all know where it's going to go. We all know how this is going to play out. We all know what's going to happen when you get to that one culture, that one identity, after all the other ones. But let's just see it so we can understand that it did happen in this camp, that they are teaching that level of racism in this camp.
So, the things that bind us together in the Latinx community.
So first of all, no, wrong, incorrect, not going to play with you. Get out of this camp. Get out of my country, because no Hispanic, no Latino uses the term Latinx. Here is a Pew poll that shows that the majority of Hispanics and Latinos have never even heard of this. This is a term invented by white progressives to correct a problem that they hear in the Spanish language. The Spanish language is a love language. It has gendered nouns. That's just how it works. It's Latino. That doubles for male and for gender neutral. I'm not from Puerto Rico X. People from down south of the border are not from a nation called Mexic X. That's not how it works. That's not how the language works. You ought to be ashamed of yourselves. You're disgusting, and I want you out. Just get out. You're not in the state of Arizona X. Stop it. Wrong, bad, incorrect. Not putting up with this. It's not getting normalized. We're never accepting it. We're fighting back against you.
Where are you from?
Oh, from Arizona.
No, but like, what part of China are you from?
Well, I'm not Chinese. I'm half Hispanic, half Vietnamese.
So this is the perfect example of people choosing to be offended by something that is not offensive at all whatsoever. People asking you where you're from is perfectly normal. This happened to me all the time growing up in New York City. It happened to all my friends. In fact, the only people that this does not happen to is not white people, despite what is being taught or said by people here. It's Black Americans. If you're Black American, you don't get asked this question because it's assumed that you are Black. If you have an accent, you'll get asked it. If you're maybe more leaning towards the Hispanic side, you'll be asked it. But if you're regular Black American, you're the only group in this country that does not get asked this question. Literally everybody else does. The idea that this kid is choosing to be offended by it is absurd. Also, like, don't be like guessing that somebody's Chinese or what part of China. Nobody cares what part of China anybody's from. They just want to hear that you're from China or whatever. Again, have a bunch of Asian friends. You know who zeroes in on this more than anybody else? Koreans and Chinese people, from my experience. And I would assume the same would be true of other Asians. I just went to school with a bunch of Koreans and Chinese people.
Not a big fan of Thanksgiving. What you were taught for Thanksgiving is an absolute lie. It was a massacre.
So now we have the Native American kid here. Again, he's a kid. He doesn't know anything, and he's here to whine about Thanksgiving. Again, if you hate Thanksgiving, one of the best holidays about family and food, wonderful. You don't have to get people gifts, so it doesn't even have the stress of other holidays. You suck as a person. The original story of Thanksgiving is actually quite a nice story. We have an early colony in the 1600s. They didn't grow a lot of stuff and nearly starved to death in their first year. Then they divided up the land individually, each person entitled to their own parcel as written out by the regional governor of the time. They produced a surplus and they invited the Native Americans to eat. What this guy is referring to is that after winning a battle, people would have a feast, and they link that based on propaganda in the media to it being the first Thanksgiving. A lot of battles were fought against Native Americans, who fought back, by the way. They weren't just massacred aimlessly. They fought back for hundreds of years, And after a victory, people would have a feast. So this guy's pretending that that's what Thanksgiving is. After you kill Native Americans, you eat. Meanwhile, every culture, everywhere in the history of the world, after they won a battle, they would celebrate. Total nonsense. It's not the actual story of Thanksgiving. Cry me a river for you hating the best holiday with the best food. Sad day for you. Go away.
So the first thing we noticed is that none of us really felt immediately connected to each other.
So of course, we move on to European/white, and we all know where this is going to go. These are the evil bad ones. And these people start out by saying that they're not connected to one another, which is true. White people don't obsess about race like black people do. They don't feel overly connected to one another, despite how the media portrays them, because white people break down into different distinct cultures. I mean, if you moved from one specific part of Italy, like southern Italy to New York, you actually lived in another neighborhood than Italians from northern Italy, and you rarely intermarried with northern Italians if you were southern Italian. This is how distinct the identities are in Europe. By the way, this is all true for Asians and for Hispanics. The idea that they could just unite and put everything together, total nonsense, but these people are doing what they think is the appropriate answer. So instead of highlighting their individual cultures like Hispanics did and try to combine them or whatever, or like the Asians did, they're just going to crap on white people as a group overall.
Another thing that we could agree on as a group is that white privilege is very dominant in our culture.
Again, white privilege is total nonsense. It's made up. What they're talking about are the consequences of achievement. And one of the problems that you run into when you try to castigate achievement as privilege is that you end up with absurdities like Asians or Indians are the most privileged in the United States of America, and we know for a fact that Asians or Indians didn't set up the United States of America, the United Kingdom, or Canada. So obviously something else is going on here besides the system being rigged in their favor.
Another thing we wanted to take into consideration was taking accountability, and just by making space for those that we have affected.
So again, this is why I can't stand these camps. This is why I can't stand this ideology. These are teens. They haven't done anything to anybody. They grew up in incredibly regressive homes. That's why they got sent to these camps. And they're saying that they need to take accountability and give space to the people that they've harmed. Most of them have never harmed anybody ever. And I don't know if you noticed this. I don't know if you were paying attention when other groups were up there. They already had their space to shine. So we have this weird, creepy scenario where everybody gets to talk up the achievements of their personal history. They get to combine them any way they want. But all of a sudden, if you're of European descent, despite the fact that Europe has a very diverse history, not all Europeans conquered all minorities throughout history. That's totally nonsensical. I just talked to you about how Western Europe gained its dominance through written language that they received from being conquered. But we're apologizing for that, and we're combining that, and we're just making it all crappy and apologizing with our time instead of highlighting good aspects of the individual cultures. I'm not telling these kids to embrace a shared white identity, but you should be somewhat informed about your personal family's history. If you're from the United Kingdom, if you're from Ireland like I am, if you're from Spain, if you're from Poland, like you didn't have anything to do with any of this. If you're from Poland, I got news for you. If you're from other Slavic nations, first of all, slavery was invented against you. That's why the word for slave in like 18 different languages actually is derived from Slav. But no, instead you're going to apologize and say that you need to not have this space even though this was allocated to you. Totally embarrassing, totally shameful, absurd. And again, we're just teaching kids to hate themselves, and we're teaching racism to all of these kids.
Throughout the week, the energy would volley between a kumbaya atmosphere of smiles, hugs, and giggles, and uncomfortable conversations that created some tense moments.
Oh my God, enough about the conversations and the uncomfortable conversations. Just shut up. Stop talking about this nonsensical conversations that need to happen or are happening. Also, he said it was a week. I thought this camp was maybe a month long. $500 per person for 1 week of this total nonsense. And probably this is 5 days, not even a real week. Holy crap, what a scam. What a scam artist this person is. You evil lefty Count Dankula. How dare you? I'm ashamed of you.
I'm not going to sit here and put my life on display in order to educate you.
So, of course, after nonstop talking about conversations and how we need to have a conversation, you have to insert the generic person who is black who says, my life isn't a tool to educate you. Well, if you're going to tell us about your lived experience, then you should tell us about your lived experience and not also complain at the same time about how you shouldn't have to tell us about your lived experience. You can't have an ideology that sets it up in such a way that nobody can understand what you, the specialist of all the specialists, is going through, but also nobody is entitled, or nobody should be able to hear from you explain it, because they wouldn't be able to understand it any other way. Again, shut up. Stop complaining. You're not that special, and in fact, you're quite literally unimpressive.
Other unaffiliated indie towns have been accused of the skits being a bit too immersive. Here in Arizona, it got emotional, but most people seem to think what they saw was worth the conversation.
So there's some horrible racist exercises in other unaffiliated groups. Unsurprising. I'm sure this one will come under scrutiny. They were staging it up for the cameras, but I do think it's really funny that, of course, he said it's worth the conversation here. Again, I can't stand how these people talk. I know I keep emphasizing it. I know I was joking about it in the beginning, but it's actually annoying me more and more as we go on. The conversation about having the conversation, it's important to have the conversation. Shut up. Nobody wants to have a conversation with you. Just stop talking. Enough conversation. We're done with it. No more. No more. No more.
You know, there's some folks that will look at what you're doing and say, man, they taking them kids up there at the top of that mountain and they indoctrinating them. All of that conversation around race and all of this is divisive.
These conversations don't divide, they actually unite.
No, wrong, incorrect, not even close. Thanks for playing. Get off the mountain and go on to live your normal lives. You literally are dividing people up in this. You had a whole segment where you had people talk about their culture, and then you had white people shame themselves for a round of applause. You can't be more divisive than that. Also, they said conversation so many times. Again, what is wrong with these people?
Conversations don't divide, they actually unite because you get through the BS.
But hey, as long as you pocket those $500 for not putting on an actual camp and just talking about having a conversation, I guess everything's okay. Evil, racist, Count Dankula. God, I can't believe you're so evil. This version of you from an alternate universe.
I'm learning things here as a 19-year-old that I should have knew already.
In all 18 years of my life, I have not heard almost everything I've heard at this camp.
So I just want to point out that regardless of race, every single person at this camp, for the most part, looks like the exact kind of person who would go to a camp like this. We literally have a pink-haired feminist that's emotional and crying. I'm talking about her white privilege here. Absurd.
I feel that in some way it is, in a way, trying to inflict some shame with how its programs are. I don't think it's intentional. I wouldn't say that that's at all what they're trying to do, but with some of the programs here, it can appear that way.
I told you this guy was my favorite. Now, he soft-pedaled it. He said, I don't think it's intentional that they're trying to inflict shame. They are, purposefully. That's why you're dividing people up by race, forcing people to talk about how great everything is in their culture, and then forcing a group of people to talk about how terrible they are and how they need to take accountability. But at least this guy recognized it. This guy is going somewhere. When he gets to college, this guy's going to lift some weights, he's going to get jacked, and he's not going to put up with this nonsense. I appreciate you, young man. Your mother paid $500 to turn you into a regressive, but you looked her dead in the face. You looked these counselors dead in the face. You looked this woke garbage dead in the face, and you came to a good analysis of it. Respect. From me to you, from AJW to this kid that I didn't remember his name, even though they put it up on screen, from Sean to that guy, respect.
Do you really believe this place is making a difference?
Yeah, we're chiseling away at these things. We might not see an end, but we're leaving it better for the people that come after us.
So Evil Dankula closes us out by vomiting up cliche after cliche, and then the kids walk over to the sunset and it's all wrapped up. But I wanted to share this with you because this is something that is going on in our country, and it's not just for the fact that people are paying to send their kids over here to be indoctrinated. It's that some of these kids are getting credit from their school for attending this racist workshop, and the leader of it, Evil Count Dankula, is actually a public school teacher. It's absolutely insane how far we've progressed in this country. And for all the people who say, oh, critical race theory's cut out of the school or whatever, like, even if it's not being taught in the schools, the public school teachers are running these side hustles, and they somehow manage to get students credit within the schools for attending this nonsense. So yeah, you should fight back against it. You should acknowledge that this is happening. You should find other crazy camps like this, and you should shame the people that are trying to grift people out of their money in order to teach them not to be racist while simultaneously teaching them racial hatred. But hey, those are just my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you liked the video, you know what to do. Show me by leaving a like. Subscribe for more content. Follow me on all my social medias. They're linked in the description. Support me via the support links. This has been me talking about Evil Count Dankula and his vice camp. Till next time.